We work with Thames distillers who are like a 16th generation distillery business. We said to them, look, how low can we go before we start to lose the full taste experience? So the warmth, the mouthfeel, the bite, everything else which you expect from a full strength gin. And they said 25%. I think other brands in the space have chosen the strength first. And then if they go lower than 25%, they'll have to try and figure out a way to build that alcohol flavour back up. Which is quite hard to do because obviously...
Hi, Low No Nation, and welcome to this week's conversation on the Low No Drinker podcast. Today, I'm chatting with the lovely Brad Crompton. Brad is the founder of Session Spirit, which is a 25% gin spirit. Now, this is the highest ABV we've had on the show, although obviously we've spoken about mid-range drinks before. What I will say to those who are listening who are very much in the alcohol-free camp, who are not big fans of the mid-range, if this isn't the episode for you, that's perfectly okay. But I wanted to get Brad on because, as you know, as I've mentioned before, I'm fascinated with the mid-range sector. I think it's an emerging category that is bringing something new, is bringing something different. And I really like to speak to these founders to find out their stories, their journeys, but their philosophies on why they've made the drinks, where these drinks sit in a moderating lifestyle, and how we can really get people to understand the benefits of mid-range drinks if it's something that fits into the way that you want to consume alcohol in your life. So I'm very happy to have Brad here today. Thank you for joining me. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm fantastic, thank you, and it's great to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast and the magazine as well. So I'm looking forward to having a good chat with you.
Thank you. And that reminds me, actually, I didn't mention in the introduction because you have a magazine as well, don't you?
We do, yeah. It's a kind of a hidden secret trade magazine, really, called The Session. So we just kind of focus on, very similar to yourself, just calling out great brands and great founders and people doing great work.
Fantastic. No, I absolutely love it. And my hat's off to you because obviously I understand how much effort and hard work goes into making a magazine.
Yes, it's character building, I think.
That's one way to put it. That's a really polite way to put it. That's not the words that I use. It's fucking hard.
It is.
No, but yours is great, and I will definitely put some links in the show notes for people. Or I'll talk about it a little bit later on. But it's definitely worth checking out. You had a great feature in your last issue with about Imbibe, which is the tequila from Lewis Hamilton, which is just huge. And
do you know what? It tastes really, really good.
Yeah,
really, really good. I was really, really impressed by it. It's probably one of the best alcohol-free liquids I've tried in terms of how close it tastes to the full strength stuff, in terms of not just the taste, but also the mouthfeel and the heat as well. So yeah, it's a really great product.
Amazing. Do you know what? Shame on me, I haven't tried that one yet. But you are, I think, the second or third person that I've spoken to, because not many people have tried it that I've spoken to who absolutely raves about it and says it's amazing. So if you are a tequila drinker, then it's definitely one worth checking out. And if Imbibe are listening and they want to send me a bottle and then put Lewis on the show to come and have a chat, that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me a bit about you, Brad. I love to start these episodes by finding out a bit more about the story, about the person behind the brand, because yes, the liquids are important and that's what I'm here to champion, but these liquids wouldn't exist without the passion of the people that make it. So start where you're comfortable to start. What was the journey that led you to decide to create Session Spirit?
Well, born 1993. No, to be fair, I always have to start this in the same way. So the company, which is actually Spirit of Bermondsey, that's the kind of the overhanging company, which not many people know about because it's sort of our background licensing company. The Session Spirit is our trading name, our brand name, which is obviously what you would hear and what we push. But the company was founded by a good friend of mine called Nick in 2019. So it was actually Nick who created the liquid the first time. And at the time, Nick was working in market research and was traveling around Europe, so kind of Spain, France, Italy, doing a lot of research on the kind of aperitivo moment, the sort of lighter, more enjoyable way of drinking that the Europeans do very well, and we haven't quite managed to figure out how to do that in the same way. It was in 2019, and Nick thought, okay, why can't we bring this way of drinking back to the UK, but maybe adopting our favorite spirits in the same way. So he did some work on creating the first iteration of Session Spirit, which was launched in November 2019, like a month before lockdown, or as lockdown hit. So for all the money we went on onto the launch, had a few placements, we got a bit of press. Lockdown hit, and then we just went on hold. And then 2 years later, we kind of revived it like a phoenix from lockdown. And then that's when things started to really change. So we rebranded it as Session Spirit. And that's when we first launched into Imbibe, where we met. We got on to a few bigger wholesalers and that sort of thing. And it felt like when we launched it in 2019, it was probably a bit early for the market. I think that was when alcohol free was really starting to hit the stride. So the conversation around mid strength wasn't really there. And as the years have gone by, the mid strength market seemed to be a bit more relevant, I suppose. But I only joined the business in 2021. So my background is weird and wonderful. I've been everywhere doing loads of different random things. So I started my career in the music industry, and then moved into tech, and then sold my soul to the corporate world and went into kind of banking and pensions and investments and that sort of thing. But my passion and my skill set has always been around branding and conceptualization of new ideas and new challenges. So I came in to help with the rebrand initially and trying to figure out a way to route to market and that sort of thing for Spirit of Bermondsey, and then we turned it into Session Spirit, and then here we are. Was it now 2 years later, 3 years later? As we are now. So.
Oh wow, fantastic! So you're absolutely right. That was my mistake. I apologize, everyone, because you're the director, aren't you, at Session at Spirits of Bermondsey, and so you're helping to bring this to market and helping to bring this to people and show the world that this drink exists. And you're right, we met at Imbibe, and I'd love to bend your ear about that, because Imbibe is I've mentioned it before on the pod, but for those who don't know, it's really an industry, a drinks industry expo where brands come to show their wares, and buyers, bartenders, restaurateurs, hoteliers come and try things with the view to stocking them. That's the official line. The unofficial line is it's where the bartenders go to get pissed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you kind of have to step over kind of drunken bodies as you leave carrying your stuff home. Yeah.
So I'd love to know what that was like, because as a 25% spirit, and we'll get on to obviously sort of why you guys settled on 25% and the processes behind that. But really, I'd love to know what the response has been like, because you mentioned just a moment ago, people weren't necessarily quite ready for mid-range a few years ago. Have you seen that change? Because obviously there's more brands like yourself that are coming out now in spirits and in beers. Wines are starting to make that change, partially due to obviously the taxation changes. But everyone is looking at alcohol now. Everyone is looking at their ABVs. People understand the term ABV more now than I think they ever have before. So somewhere like Imbibe, where people are generally just walking around going, booze, booze, booze. What kind of responses are you having there, and then from your sort of general public?
So it's a good question. So we're finding initially people go, "Ooh, half strength. Okay, I'll maybe try it. See how. Well, kind of also, what's the point as well?" That's the first initial reaction, because we market ourselves as being half the strength, but you still get the full taste and flavor, right, of a full strength product, which people are skeptical about. They kind of want to come over and challenge us and see if it really does tick the boxes, which is quite nice, because it means they come over to try and test it out to see, but they come over maybe with their guard up already, trying to find ways to kind of to prove us wrong. But we get a lot of great feedback, and it's so nice to see it counts for more when people have actually come over to say, "Oh, I'll see about that," and then they try it and they go, "Actually, yeah, this is really good." So yeah, at Imbibe, I think this year it might have been different to what it has been in previous years. So this was our first year of going, and I think it's also the first year that it wasn't free. So people had to buy a ticket to go, and they didn't have all the big guys there this year either. So there was no Diageo, no Bacardi, who probably have a bit more freedom to hand out a lot more drinks than those smaller guys can. So it felt a bit more tame than what we were prepared for it to be. And we came back with a lot more stock than we thought we would because the footfall was quite low. So there wasn't anyone kind of clambering around us to try and get free drinks that much anyway. But no, I mean, the feedback has been great. I think, you know, our whole message is around sort of bridging the gap between the all or nothing options. So, but also the fact that it is lower calorie and it's more sessionable. So, you know, typically drinks are quite strong, and the gin is quite a strong, potent spirit anyway. So, not many people can really enjoy them for a long period of time, both for their own desires, but also the body's desires to allow you to do that anyway. So I think people just would find it quite refreshing that you can kind of have the same experience, but also do it in a way which you know it's a bit better for you. It's a bit more flexible around how you want to consume. One thing we do though is we challenge people to try a shot of full strength and then a shot of ours and see which one they prefer. And that's the key message: is which one do you prefer, not which one do you think is the full strength gin? Because I don't know if you've ever done a shot of full strength gin neat. It's not always pleasant.
A shot of most things, to be fair.
Yeah,
I can't say I remember them very well.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant experience. But yeah, it's more of a case of we do have the challenge of even though it's not full strength, you know, it can still taste better while still giving you everything you need or everything you want from a gin. So all in all, I'd say vast majority of people really like it. Others who are, you know, die hard, if it's not 45% gin, then I don't want it. Then, you know, that they have their own preference too. But yeah, it's been good.
Okay, so why 25% then? What was the reasoning behind settling on that number? Was it just that it tastes better at that ABV? Is it that you were wanting to get it as high as possible without going over a certain threshold? Because I know that, you know, within your space you have other brands who have gone for perhaps the 10% or the 12.5%, and then for those who may not know, to be considered a traditional gin, you're supposed to be, is it 37.5% is the minimum for gin? So what was it that you guys went, okay, 25%, that's the magic number?
This is my favorite question to be asked, because it's a really big part behind a big part of our message and who we are. So the reason we did 25% is because when we designed the product in the first instance, we wanted to go with taste, texture, tenacity, you know, over anything else. You know, if you're a mid-strength spirit, you can there's leeway in how you drink and how strong it can be and how strong you mix it. So we knew the strength was always going to be a bit flexible anyway, and how people consumed it. So for us, taste was important. So we said to our distillery, who we work with, Thames Distillers, who are like a 16th generation distillery business, all in one big family. So they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. We said to them, look, how low can we go before we start to lose the full taste experience? So the warmth, the mouthfeel, the bite, everything else which you expect from a full strength gin. How low can we go before you start to lose that? And they said 25%. I think other brands in the space have chosen the strength first, and then they've chosen their strength for their own reasons. And then if they go lower than 25%, they'll have to try and figure out a way to build that alcohol flavor back up, which is quite hard to do because obviously it's a natural kind of reaction in the mouth. So we said 25%. We miss out on the tax breaks, unfortunately. I think at the moment, before anything else is released later on in October, I think 22% or lower, you benefit from a tax break. So even though we're 3% over, in theory, we could drop it by 3% to benefit from the tax breaks, but we won't, because we feel that lowering it below that cutoff point, that threshold point, will remove our ability to say we have the full strength experience, or full strength flavor, sorry, rather than experience. And we think that if someone bought us at 25% and really enjoyed it because it gave them everything they wanted out of the taste and flavor, then they'll buy again. But if we sacrifice that full flavor and taste just to get £1.50 off a bottle in tax, they might not buy again because it's not doing what it says on the tin. So that's why we did 25%. It's the strength in which you can still retain everything that you'd want from that experience. And for that reason, as far as I'm aware, and I check often to make sure that the statement is still true, I believe we're the only lower ABV spirit to win an award in the full strength category.
Okay.
Which is a huge thing for us.
That's fantastic. And which award was that?
The London Spirits competition.
Fantastic. And that was up against full strength spirits of all types, and they've picked yours out and gone, this tastes amazing.
Yeah, so you get kind of a grading and awards for going in, and I think there's about over 2,000 global products entered when we came out with the bronze award. Obviously being at least 12.5% weaker or lower in strength than the entry points in the full strength market. So yeah, that for us was a huge testament to the work we did with our distillery to make sure the product essentially, it delivers what we say it does. So to have that kind of immortalized with an award ceremony was great.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about the flavor then. So I've got a bottle here, and I will put up some other pictures as well for those watching. It is a sort of a more squat style rounded bottle, just to describe for those who are listening rather than watching. And I like your branding. It's very you haven't gone for anything that's too complicated. There's not lots of pictures on there. There's not lots of sort of icons of different things to do with booze. It's very clear letters, Session Spirit. Talk to me a little bit about the flavor profile, as we've been talking about that, and then we'll talk about the name as well, if we can.
Yeah, cool. So this one here is our London Dry. So it's made with London Dry gin, with 3 key botanicals in addition to the juniper. So we have cardamom, coriander, and black pepper. So all, I'd say, quite popular or quite standardized botanicals in a London Dry gin. But interestingly, because we've built the product around the Bermondsey area, or the kind of Bermondsey history of London, which is where the kind of gin craze first started, and inspired by the Shad Thames building. So where all these kind of ingredients, which are first introduced from the Eastern world way back when, were all kind of stored in those warehouses down the Shad Thames in Bermondsey. So you'll still see things like Cardamom House and Nutmeg House and those sort of things down there. So we've been inspired by that area. So it's very crisp, very dry flavor, but it's also slightly spiced towards the end of the drink, and a slight citrus in there as well. So it works quite well. The nearest gin I would position it to, I never know if I'm saying it correctly. Is it Ophir gin?
Ophir, yeah.
Yeah. So very, very similar profile to Ophir gin, just a bit lighter, a little bit smoother as it goes down the throat.
That would explain why I like it then, because I am not, to be honest with you, I wasn't a big gin drinker. And it's really funny. One of the company I was working for before I started the whole low no drinker, I was working for an independent bar group. And one of the venues that we had at one point for several years had London's largest gin selection in any bar. There were over 300 gins.
Oh wow, cool.
And yeah, it was huge. It was really funny because it was sort of the sister bar to the one that I was running, and then I was doing the events for everything. And I used to talk to people about it, and I was like, I can't stand gin, so I had to just make stuff up. But as I was working there, I started trying things, and I discovered a couple of gins that I really liked, and there were two that I still remember today. And one was Elephant, I really liked that one, and the other one was Ophir. And I remember the bottle as well. It was sort of purple and gold and sort of lots of Indian style decoration on it. It was really beautiful. And then actually when I tasted yours as well, it had that lightness to it. Now, obviously it hasn't got the full strength of alcohol, so it's going to taste lighter, but you're right that because Ophir is not a heavy gin, because you have some gins that just sort of smack you in the face. Whereas Ophir is a lot more subtle, I like to say.
Yes, more gentle. I mean, that's one thing that we say with ours. Really, it's you still get the full botanical experience and the full kind of heat and warmth that you want from a full strength gin without the punch in the mouth. Because I feel like if you when you drink a gin, especially, the first thing that you might taste initially is the alcohol, and then you feel the botanicals, and then you feel the warmth. We kind of have the same experience without that initial kind of overly bitterness that you might not like.
Yeah. So I mentioned that we'd talk about the name as well.
Yeah.
Because I think that, within this realm that we're in, because obviously you are one foot in each camp with the full strength alcohol and the lower strength alcohol. And the term session is one that became popularized a few years ago now. It wasn't always around. I don't always remember people talking about, session beers and session ales. And now it's become quite a lot more popular. So I'm really interested in your choice with the name and the response that people have had to it. Because it isn't a low alcohol product in terms of the government guidelines of being below 1.2. So it is far more something that would be used by people who are still imbibing. Obviously, they still like to drink alcohol, but might be wanting just a bit less on a particular day for a particular reason. Welcome back, everybody. I'm not sure where I'm going to cut that edit, but it's another one of the disasters that happened. I was interviewing Rob Fink from Big Drop a while ago, and I managed to drop one of his cans on the floor, and it cracked, and then spurted chocolate stout all over me in the carpet halfway through an interview. So yeah. Podcaster of the year, woohoo! But I was asking you about the name and the term Session Spirit, and really your choice to go with that name, and then how it's been received by people, because I can imagine that you have a lot of comments from both sides of the camps when it comes to your product. So what are people saying to you?
Yeah, well, we changed our name because it's very, very difficult to explain what you are in a succinct and kind of marketable way without having to talk for ages. So before we'd say our brand name, then we'd say the product name, and then we'd have to say it's a kind of half strength gin, and then before you've finished saying that, you're 3 sentences in, and okay, but what is it? Tell me quickly. So, and we can't, and there's so many different rules and regulations and guidelines and brackets or categorizations that people understand differently depending on which market you're in and which country you're in and everything else. So we had to try to find a way how do we explain what it is without having to actually explain what it is? So we just took inspiration from the beer market, because that seems to be the only market really which has a wide kind of plethora of different strengths and categories in it already. And people seem to know the concept and understand the concept of session beer, which is just a lighter alternative to what could be a full strength option, right? So And we knew that we were already talking about drinking sessionably before we changed the name. It's just the idea of just being able to consume less alcohol within the same drink that you're drinking. So it made sense to call ourselves a sessionable spirit or a session spirit. And our aim is to build out the range of different spirits anyway. So we have the gin. On our radar is to introduce other variations of spirit. So creating this kind of sessionable range was on our radar, but also working with bars, working with groups and on menus. We try to foresee or almost kind of guesstimate or kind of panel for ourselves what this kind of area is going to be called on a menu.
Yeah.
And if menus already have the session beer option, it seems like a natural progression to introduce a session spirit option or a session wine option or whatever it might be. So that's why we chose the name, really. It's more of a case of trying to explain why you drink it and what you drink it for in the name. So it kind of feels a bit more comfortable and relatable to people who see it on a menu or on a bar shelf.
Yeah. And how has that been with bars then, speaking to bartenders and landlords and proprietors and trying to get your drink on their shelves? Are people understanding what it is? Are they sort of open to how they can bring this to their customers, or are you finding that it's more of an education piece? Because I'd love to speak more about that education, how we get that knowledge out there.
Oh, it's absolutely an education piece. Yeah, 100%. I think the biggest challenge that we have, which is split across both the on trades, the bartenders and retail, and the off trade and things like direct to consumers. The on trade have said in the past there doesn't seem to be a demand for it, which is interesting because it doesn't really exist. It's quite a new space. So people, if it's not there to be asked for, people won't ask for it. It's like going in, 20 years ago, going in and asking for an alcohol-free beer. They didn't really exist in the mainstream. But a bartender could be in its rights and say, well, no one's asking for alcohol-free beer, so we don't sell it. If no one knows it exists, then how are you going to ask for it? So that's a kind of an infinite loop we have at the minute, which is interesting, especially when a lot of bars at the moment seem to be tightening up on stock and what they're ordering. So they're kind of focusing on what is selling. And in the consumer space, I'm just focusing on the challenges here. I'll move on to the good stuff because there is some good stuff. Consumers educating around how to drink more mindfully or more sessionably or in a way that retains flavor is quite difficult as well, because we've had people in the past say, well, why don't I just pour in half a measure into my gin and tonic? And I mean, it makes sense in terms of the ABV perspective, but so does having a shandy or having a wine spritz. It's no longer a beer or a glass of wine anymore. It's a different product. And if you're looking at the ratio of a traditional gin and tonic, it's usually around 1 part gin to 3 parts tonic, or 1 part gin to 4 parts tonic. If you're then pouring in half a measure, that becomes 1 to 6 or 1 to 8. So the flavor is very, very different. And no longer, it doesn't taste like a full G&T anymore. It will taste like a watered down gin and tonic, which is one of the problems we're trying to solve. It's kind of we want to retain the flavor, not just focus on ABV. So they're the challenges that we've had in terms of on trade and off trade. On the other side of that, some people really get it. They understand, why you would drink it. They understand about retaining the flavor. It's about giving everyone the full experience, no matter if they want to have full strength, mid strength, or alcohol free. Right? People ultimately want to enjoy the drink that they're having, and for people who typically are drinkers, who I'd say are more a target market, those who traditionally will have an alcoholic drink, who might want to drink less or have a bit more of an easier night, they still would like to get as close to what they typically drink. So that's very big for us. But interestingly, we did a bit of research through our own website recently, which was a survey after you bought the drink, and we've asked the question, why are you buying this? And the options we had were to be able to enjoy more drinks than I would typically enjoy now, to reduce a hangover, to lower calories, and for a lighter or a smoother taste than a full strength gin. And when we did that, what do you think was the most chosen answer?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because I could see good reasons for all of those. Would it be to have more drinks than I typically have now?
Yeah, so that's what so that and hangovers or no hangovers has the majority, right?
Amazing.
I typically thought we'd see it because it allows people. I think the calorie option was a big thing for us. We're half the calories. I thought that would be a big thing. But also just to consume less alcohol in general, I thought that would be kind of one of the winners. But it was actually to be able to have a bit more than you typically drink in an evening.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So people are wanting to drink more. They're wanting to have a longer night. They're wanting to have a longer session, but they're not able to commit to that or to keep it going because they're just too rat-assed by halfway through. So that's really interesting.
Because gin's a strong. It can be a very strong spirit. Gin cocktails can be quite strong, So by having that strength, you're able to do that, and it makes. I mean, this again might be the marketing that we do, which draws these people into our website, and that's maybe why that they choose that, because we focus on how you can maintain the evening, if should you wish. Now this might cause friction. This next thing I'm going to say is there's a lot of work around like zebra striping and bookending, which is a phrase which is gaining more popularity, and it's more and more prevalent in the industry. I personally don't like that phrase because I think the only reason that phrase has been brought into the public eye is because there hasn't really been many good mid-strength spirits to do that. Because I think of it, it's a bit like if you had a boiling hot drink and a freezing cold drink to try to stay warm, you can drink them separately rather than drinking a nice middle ground warm drink. So I actually forgot what my point was, and I think I spoke too scared of saying something.
No, I don't think you should be. I don't think you should be. I think the whole. So for those who may not have heard these terms before, even though they're very popular now, so zebra striping and bookending were terms that were coined, phrases that were coined by CAM when they brought out their report in conjunction with Lucky Saint about low and no drinking, and they put names to these things that people have been doing for a while anyway. And actually I used slightly different terminology when I talk about it, but they've described bookending as people that will go out and have an alcohol-free drink at the start of the night and at the end of the night and drink alcohol in between. And they describe zebra striping as people would have an alcohol-full drink and then an alcohol-free drink, then an alcohol-full, then an alcohol-free. Which to me sounds like you've got quite a lot to sort of keep track of. There's there. So yeah, in terms of whether or not these terms are appropriate to or accurate to what people are doing, I think that people are looking at drinking less. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I don't know if we're quite as methodical about it as those terms suggest.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
No, I said it jokingly now, but the whole zebra striping thing sounds a bit like you've got to pay attention to what I had a full strength now I've got to have an alcohol-free one. I myself, when I've spoken about it, and I've got a quiz where people can go and sort of see what sort of type of low, no, and light drinker they are, and I use the term blender. A blended drinker is somebody who would have different types of drinks on a night out, so they might fancy an alcohol-free drink at some point or an alcohol-full. They might walk into the pub and go, oh, look, there's my favorite X type of drink, and choose that rather than setting out and planning. because for me, I find it's a slight tangent, but when it comes to looking at people's drinking habits, it's the difference between that sort of active moderation and sort of like, I'm not allowed to have a drink Monday to Thursday. I'm not allowed. I've got to wait till Friday. Or the passive moderation, which is, I don't actually feel like drinking very much, so I'm only going to have one if it's something I really want to have. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to have X, Y, and Z. And so I can see what you mean in terms of the zebra striping, not necessarily being the way that most people would actually go about thinking about how they're going to manage their drinking. And interestingly enough, I was interviewing Russell Lamb on here a few weeks back, who is the founder of 6%.
Love Russ.
He's a lovely guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, and you were both at the Drink It In festival, which we were speaking about before we pressed record. And he was saying something very similar as well to you, sort of the whole, is zebra striping the way that people are going forward? Or is this mid-range actually now coming in to offer a solution as a way to not have to think about which drink did I have last time? What's next on the list? Or would you then be able to go, all right, if I had a 6% wine like his, or a 25% gin like yours, or a 3% beer like a Genius or small beer or something, does that mean that I can just elongate the night without going too far over straight away?
Yeah, and it comes down to kind of the reason why, I think. So, like you said before, it might just be the fact you don't really fancy drinking that much or at all. You might go out and think, you know what, I don't really want to drink alcohol. I'll drink something else. Yeah. Or it could be, it could be the fact that you've got, maybe you're watching your fitness. So it's a calorie thing. But then again, it's a different way of changing your habits in drinking. Like if I was on a fitness regime where I was still drinking alcohol, I wouldn't choose a beer. Like a pint of beer, I would choose probably a short. Yeah. Still alcoholic, but it's a calorie difference, which then will change my habit. So it could be the fact that maybe it's a weekday and you want to keep it pretty fresh, and the next morning, or so it's not all about sort of alcohol or alcohol free. There's a whole kind of other realm of reasons why people would change what they drink, and I think that's really important to understand that too. Before we apply labels to it, it's more around, and I think this is why the mid-strength is really important as a category, across spirits, beer, wine, anything else, is it gives people the freedom and the full range of options to decide how they want to drink without it having to be a choice between sort of two ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And going back to the education piece, because I think we've kind of gone off on our own little conversation there, haven't we? But I think it stemmed from the education piece, which was something I'm really passionate about. And I've been talking to Cam about this to see how we could introduce like a trial or a pilot or something of this nature, which is to turn the cocktail menus into something a bit more visual. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of said it in the past, and I've been on a few panels, so I've talked about this kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of being like a cheeky joking about it. But I genuinely think it's something which we should look at, which is introducing a bit of a chili system, which we see on spicy foods, or how strong is it? It's 3 or 4 chilies, or it's 1 chili. It's mild. We see on most FMCG products which have a differentiator in strength, you'll see this kind of symbol approach where hairspray 0 to 5 circles, it's 3 out of 5 circles filled in, it's mid-strength. It won't glue your hair to your face, sort of like the 5 circle thing will.
You've got the wrong audience here. I'm not really big on the whole hairspray thing.
Yeah. But okay, in anything, I think it's a lot. But it'd be really, really cool to see a menu which has everything from alcohol-free, like 0.00, all the way up to their kind of strongest stuff, and everything in between, and showing this kind of like sessionable scale, which I've selfishly coined to match our product, but it can be called anything. Yeah. This strength scale, so people don't have to kind of figure out like, well, how strong is it? What's the ABV? What's everything around it? Because not all cocktails show ABV. And I think if you sat down to people and said, how strong is this martini compared to this Negroni or this margarita, people won't really know,
No, won't have a clue.
and they probably no, and they probably just go off how strong it tastes, right? So I think having a visual scale to show people, well, here's if you choose our drink, here's where it sits. If you choose our drink in a cocktail mixed with Botivo and someone else, so here's where it sits. So being able to decide on a visual cue of I'm feeling this sort of strength today, or and it gives people a bit more of an idea around what they're actually drinking in a way that they can understand it quickly. I think that's could be cool.
I think there's a lot of work, I agree, to be done around menus and that communication to consumers to know what they can have, or what their options are, rather, to allow them to drink the way that they want to drink. It is a conversation. It's a topic that's been brought up several times. So do we have ABVs on menus? Do we have something that shows how strong something is? Do we put it in units because that's what your doctor asks, and maybe people understand that? There's so many different ways, and I think, to be honest with you, we've just got to start trying stuff, because I
Yeah,
don't know if your way is the best way. I don't know if units is the best way. I don't know what it is, but I do know that we need to do something, because
yeah,
until we start trying to communicate this better to people, we won't know what's going to resonate with them and what they're going to understand. Because it's all just sort of
I still don't
guesswork.
get units. Yeah, I still
Yeah.
don't really. I don't get units still. I know
It's and
it's
a lot of people don't. And I've made this point before. You go to your doctor, and the doctor asks how many units do you drink a week, and people either lie because they don't want to say too much, or B, they genuinely don't know because it's not on anything. I mean, there's some changes coming in now, and a lot more labels are starting to include them. But still, as a point of reference, if you ask your average Joe or Josephina on the street, they're not going to know, how many units are in. Like you said, your examples are a martini, a gin martini versus a mojito, both cocktails. They're both going to have very different alcohol contents.
yeah,
And
definitely.
to be able to have these drinks, and I think that to give people the choice, if you can have a menu and it says have a gin martini, and then you can decide how strong you want that to be, but in a way that's really easy for people, so they don't have to give a number. They can, like you say, go, I'll have it at the lower end or the higher end, or whatever it
Yeah,
is. How we get that out there. I guess the other thing for the education piece as well, for the mid-range spirits, and beers and other things in that mid-range space, is the education to the consumer on, because one of the questions that I have come to me is that, how do I know how many I can have? It's
yeah,
that, can I have, if I'm having a mid-strength beer or I'm having a mid-strength cocktail, can I drive, or can I go to work, or can I, this, and it's how we get that information out to people as well, because I think that scares a few people when it comes to mid-range.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's. I wouldn't even say it's just limited to mid range either. I think it depends how it's mixed in a cocktail too. Like to your point before, a mojito is a lot of ice, a lot of soda, sugar, everything else, and then sort of one measure of of rum, or,
Yeah.
or probably a double measure of rum, compared to a very small drink of a martini, which is quite strong. So again, how it is watered down and how it's placed with other ingredients makes the ABV lower. And I think, yeah, I fully agree, because it's like when we introduced calories to a menu, which
Mm-hmm.
was introduced a few years ago, you can only do that because we have a national standard guideline of what calories
Yeah.
the average person should intake. Otherwise, it's pointless. You need to be able to show, here's what this is, and here's how it fits into a recommended guidance. Um, that's going to be very, very hard to do, because how do you govern what people should drink? It's you can't, because some people, everyone is different. Everyone has different preferences. Everyone's built differently. It doesn't fit into people's lifestyles. Are you doing it with food? Or are you not doing it with food? What's your blood tolerance to alcohol? So it'd be very, very difficult to give guidance like that to the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the government would want to, because in a way, it seems like you could be advocating for the consumption of alcohol by giving people a guidance. which probably isn't right to do. So, yeah, I mean, I can never turn around and do a marketing campaign and say you can have, if you can have one gin and tonic, now you can have two and still drive with us. Because that's so dangerous. And for the same reason, because there's no standardized guidance which would work. So it's all around showcasing where you fit on a menu of other options and allowing people to decide what works for them at that moment in time for their own reasons, for their own appetite to alcohol. And doing so in a way which just positions yourself clearly, I think, in the market, and allow people to make their own decisions, really. Because I think if we go down the route of maybe too much guidance, it's going to be very tricky, and probably not what people want. I think there's a lot of backlash from the calorie thing, wasn't there, a few years ago, in general, but that's a bit more of a standardized and accepted thing anyway, and there was still backlash. I think if menus started to say, here's how much you should drink, I don't think it would feel right.
And I think the other thing as well is bars taking up systems such as you were suggesting, in terms of like a traffic light sort of thing, or a visual sort of signal as to the strength of drinks, and because it's going to require an understanding and a unanimity across the hospitality industry, because it's not going to work if it's only 10 venues. Because
no, exactly, yeah. And I think so. Laura Willoughby made a good point around this. She mentioned this traffic light system, which has been brought up in the past, similar to how foods have it in supermarkets, so you can see if they're healthy or not. But it's the kind of the amalgamation of what you're drinking which can make it healthy or unhealthy. So if you had one drink, then yes, in theory that could be green because it's only one drink in isolation, and it might be a low calorie, low alcohol option. But if you have 10 of those, then it could become red, because then it's 10 times the calories and 10 times the alcohol consumption. But it's impossible to kind of say, again, how much have you drunk of it? How does your body intake alcohol? And it's very different for everyone. So yeah, I think unless you had some sort of kind of dystopian way of managing alcohol intake, or a standardized government-led process which allows you to scan the drink and it has the ingredients, and then you can add it to a calculator for that evening, which every bar would have to adhere to, which takes us into a bit even more of a nanny state. I don't think it's going to work. So I think it just has to be a lot more education inside and outside of venues as well, around alcohol intake, how it fits into a healthy lifestyle, if it does at all, the risk of abusing alcohol, what's out there, and then allow people to make their own choices, but do it in a way which is easy to make their own choices. I think that's the important part. Is, most bars you go into now, you don't know what you're drinking, what's in it, how strong it is, and yeah, I don't know if bartenders are willing to open up the doors to showcasing that, in the same way that a lot of food chains weren't either. So
there's so much to be done, isn't there? There's so many ways to go. I think, as I said before, my thought is that we need to start taking some action. It just to help people to be able to start making better informed choices. I've always said on this podcast, this is not about telling people not to drink. It's not about demonizing alcohol. It's about giving people options for those times when they're choosing not to drink or to drink less. And to do that, we just need to give people information and make it, as you said, easy, easy for people to find and easy for people to understand. Whether or not that means we adopt it as we try and educate people more about ABVs, or if it's more about units, whether there's just so many different ways that it can go. I think that we really just need to be able to find a way to help people to make the best choices for the way they want to live their
Yeah.
life, so that they can get the most out of it. I'll take it back to session in particular, but along that tangent then. So who is it that session is for? Who is it? Because you mentioned your marketing before and who you're appealing to. So who is it that is the ideal drinker for a session spirit?
Do you know what? It's funny. This is probably the hardest question I have to answer.
Okay. Sorry.
Because no, it's a good one. Because I mean, the thing is, like, because we sit in the middle, and because we're kind of the half strength option, it kind of works for everyone. And this is where we've had a hard time trying to get our messaging right, and we have to kind of target different segments of people with different messaging, really, because it works for different ways, right? So from what I can say confidently is from what we've seen from the feedback from the survey on our website when people have bought a product from us, it's for those who enjoy a gin and tonic who would like to be able to enjoy it more than they currently can because they're limited to the strength of a full strength gin. So people who want to be able to drink a bit more sessionably, a bit more freely than they can with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's for people as well who might want to reduce their alcohol intake in a more consistent way. So rather than looking at just drinking less of what they love on an evening out or an evening in, or swapping a full strength for an alcohol free for a full strength and trying to keep on top of that, it allows them to drink one drink, their favorite type of drink, gin, consistently, knowing that it's a better for them option than it would be drinking a full strength gin. Or perhaps people who want to maintain their social lifestyle or their social drinking schedule, let's say, but with a lower calorie option, it fits in there as well. Or finally, those who just can't drink that much gin because it just blows the head off, but they want a lighter, smoother option. So there's different reasons why people might want to drink. It works well for a midweek gin and tonic to help take the edge off without waking up the next morning with a thick head.
Yeah.
Or so essentially it's just for those, to try to summarize that, it's for those who just want to have a bit more freedom to enjoy their favorite drinks in a way which fits their lifestyle choices any day of the week.
I like that. Freedom. That's a lovely approach to it, I think, giving people the freedom of choice to have that adaptability in their drinking schedule, which is another term you just used that I quite liked. You mentioned before that you've got your eye on some other possible SKUs in the range. Is there anything that you can reveal that might be coming out anytime soon, or are we looking a bit further away?
So it will probably be next year when we're aiming to do this, and we're trying to do this in one go. So the plan is to, rather than sort of slowly bring out a different SKU, we want to try and bring them all out together. So the plan is to try and cover as much of a cocktail menu as we can in terms of the base ingredient, which makes it easier for bartenders and bar groups to adopt a sessionable option if they can do so in one go, than it would be to slowly introduce 1, 2, 3 products in this mid-range. So that's the plan, really. It's a kind of, don't want to give too much away, but kind of, it's the vodka, the rums, the tequilas.
That's a big plan.
That sort of space.
That's a lot to bring out in, because just thinking of it's usually sort of your 5 base spirits, isn't it? That covers most of a drinks menu, or can cover most drinks that people want to ask for. I can imagine that's quite an undertaking to go from 1 to 5 or 6 SKUs in one jump. But I wonder if it's like when people have kids and they say, going from 0 kids to 1 kid is quite an adjustment. Once you've had the first one, you know what to expect. So it's a lot easier to bring them out.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we're just going to pile them up. I mean, look, whether we actually go and release 5 at once, it all comes down to essentially the market, what we can afford to do, what makes sense, whether it's balancing marketing spend over production spend and all that sort of thing. The end goal is to have, all the typical ones available, because we know that having one product is limiting to if you're a rum drinker, then we're not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
But if you have the same concept in a rum, then it could. So it's all about kind of expanding our range and our target audience, really.
Fantastic. So if people want to go and find out a bit more about that, maybe they want to get on your newsletter to be kept up to date, or of course they want to get their hands on a bottle of Session, where should we send them, Brad?
Best place is to go to our website, which is sessionspirit.com, or you can give it a follow on socials at Session Spirit.
Excellent. And I'll make sure that's all in the show notes for everybody. Thank you for coming along. Before I let you go, it's time for my final question, which is my now infamous barbecue question. I appreciate that it is autumn and there is perhaps a hurricane nearby, but I'm going to keep the positivity. I'm going to keep the sunshine in my mind. So it is a lovely sunny day and you're off to a barbecue at a mate's house. Other than a bottle of the fantastic Session Spirit, be it the gin, or if someone's listening in a few months' time, maybe a rum or a whiskey, or who knows. What other low-no or light drinks do you like to enjoy when you're just chilling out with your friends?
So there are two products which I generally really love. Actually, I'm going to add three because we talked about Almarv this morning earlier on, which did remind me. So if I was to go for an alcohol-free or a low spirit, it will probably be the Almarv, or Almarve, however you say it, and whipping up some alcohol-free sort of margaritas. But typically, I would go for either a small beer. I love their stuff, and they're from the same sort of area that we are. But what I did try at Drinking In Festival, which I thought was incredible, was the New Wave beers. So that'd be kind of the I think I tried the hazy IPA with the adaptogens built into it, which I really value. I think if you're having an alcohol-free option, adding in other things which could benefit you, I think it's really important. So big shout out to New Wave.
Oh, fantastic. So those are, some people might not have heard of them yet because they are pretty much brand new, aren't they? They haven't been around for very long. And they've come out with a range of two beers, a lager and a hazy ale. And they're both adaptogenic and nootropic enhanced, which I think is the next, well, not the next, it is another big wave, isn't it? In that sort of low, no and light space. It's, as you say, those added benefits. So not only are people sort of drinking less, but they're trying to put more good stuff in, which can only be a good move. And then what was your other one? Was it small beer?
Yeah, small beer.
So then they're a great mid-strength beer range, which I think is a fantastic. And they've got about 5 in their range, haven't they? Which are all sort of like 2% to 3.5%. That sort of marker. Fantastic. And Almarve, once again, anytime you want to send Lewis over to me, I'm more than happy to have a chat. We share a surname, it's fine. We're connected.
There you go.
Brad, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciated your time and your candid thoughts on the space and how we can help it to grow and to reach more people. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.